Marcus Thompson had always been the type of person who noticed things others missed. As a social worker in the small town of Millbrook, Pennsylvania, he developed an eye for the subtle signs that something wasn't right. The way a child flinched when an adult raised their voice, the forced smile that never reached someone's eyes, the careful way someone moved as if every step caused pain. These details had become second nature to him after 15 years in the field. It was a Tuesday morning in October when he first met Emma Rodriguez. She was 12 years old, sitting in the waiting area of the Department of Children and Family Services with her foster mother, Patricia Henley. Marcus watched from his office doorway as Patricia filled out paperwork, her pen moving in sharp, aggressive strokes across the forms. Emma sat perfectly still beside her, hands folded in her lap, staring at the floor with the kind of stillness that only came from practice. "Emma Rodriguez," Marcus called softly, stepping into the waiting area. The girl's head shot up, and for just a moment he saw something flash across her face, fear, maybe, or resignation. Patricia stood quickly, her hand moving to Emma's shoulder in what would have looked like a protective gesture to anyone else. But Marcus saw how Emma's body tensed under that touch. "Come on, sweetheart," Patricia said, her voice saccharine sweet. "Time to talk to Mr. Thompson." As they walked toward his office, Marcus noticed Emma's gait. She moved carefully, slowly, as if sitting down might cause her discomfort. It was subtle, but it was there. He filed the observation away in his mind as they settled into the chairs across from his desk. Patricia dominated the conversation as Marcus had expected she would. She painted a picture of Emma as a troubled child, prone to lying and acting out. "She's been through so much trauma," Patricia explained, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Her biological parents were drug addicts, you know. The poor thing has trust issues. Sometimes she makes up stories for attention." Emma said nothing throughout this character assassination. She sat with her hands in her lap, occasionally shifting uncomfortably in her chair. Marcus found himself studying her face, looking for any sign of the behavioral problems Patricia described. What he saw instead was a child who had learned to make herself invisible. "Emma," Marcus said gently, "is there anything you'd like to tell me? Anything at all?" The girl's eyes flicked toward Patricia, then back to her hands. "No, sir," she whispered. Patricia smiled triumphantly. "See, she's very quiet. Sometimes I worry she's not adjusting well to our family dynamic." The meeting continued for another 20 minutes, with Patricia doing most of the talking. She discussed Emma's grades, which were actually quite good, and her behavior at home, which according to Patricia was challenging but manageable. Emma remained silent throughout, only speaking when directly asked a question, and even then her answers were brief and careful. As they prepared to leave, Marcus stood and walked around his desk. "Emma," he said, "I'd like to show you something." He led her to a bookshelf in the corner of his office, where he kept a collection of books for the children he worked with. Feel free to take one if you'd like. Reading can be a good escape sometimes. Emma's eyes lit up for the first time since she'd entered his office. She reached for a worn copy of Charlotte's Web, then hesitated and looked back at Patricia. "Go ahead," Patricia said, but her tone had a sharp edge to it. "Mr. Thompson is being very generous." As Emma reached for the book, she had to stretch slightly, and Marcus saw her wince. It was quick, barely noticeable, but it was there. When she sat back down to wait for Patricia to finish scheduling their next appointment, Marcus watched her carefully lower herself into the chair, her movements deliberate and cautious. "Mrs. Henley," Marcus said, "I'd like to schedule a home visit within the next week or two. Just routine follow-up." Patricia's smile faltered for just a moment. "Of course," she said, "though I should mention Emma has been having some stomach issues lately. The doctor says it's probably stress-related. You know how it is with foster children. They sometimes develop psychosomatic symptoms." Marcus nodded, filing away this information as well. "What kind of stomach issues?" "Oh, just discomfort when sitting for long periods. The doctor recommended she try to stay active, avoid sitting too much." Patricia's explanation came quickly, too quickly, as if she'd rehearsed it. Emma's head snapped up at this, her eyes wide. For just a moment, she looked like she wanted to say something, but then Patricia's hand landed on her shoulder again, and the moment passed. After they left, Marcus sat at his desk and opened Emma's file. Her case history was heartbreaking but unfortunately common. Parents with severe addiction issues, multiple placements, behavioral concerns noted by previous foster families. But as he read through the reports, something didn't add up. The behavioral issues described in earlier placements were typical acting out, difficulty with authority, some aggression. But since being placed with the Henleys 6 months ago, there had been no behavioral incidents reported. In fact, according to her school records, Emma had become almost invisible. Her teachers described her as quiet but compliant, keeps to herself, no problems in class. Marcus had seen this pattern before. Sometimes children who had been acting out would suddenly become model citizens, but not usually in the way Emma had. Her transformation seemed less like adjustment and more like suppression. He picked up his phone and dialed the school. "Hi, this is Marcus Thompson from DCFS. I'm calling about Emma Rodriguez. Is her teacher available?" Mrs. Sarah Chen, Emma's sixth-grade teacher, was happy to talk. "Emma is such a sweet girl," she said. "Very bright, always turns in her homework on time. She's quite popular with the other students." "Has she mentioned any problems at home? Any concerns about her placement?" There was a pause. "Well, there was one thing. About a month ago, she asked if she could eat lunch in my classroom instead of the cafeteria. She said the benches in the lunchroom were uncomfortable. I didn't think much of it at the time, but now that you mention it, she does seem to have trouble sitting for long periods. During standardized testing last week, she kept shifting in her seat, and I had to remind her to sit still several times. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. Has she ever mentioned being in pain? Not directly, but Mrs. Chen hesitated. This might sound strange, but last week during recess, I heard her talking to another student. She was very quiet about it, but I heard her say something like it hurts when I sit. I thought maybe she'd fallen or something, but when I asked her about it, she just said she was fine. After hanging up, Marcus sat back in his chair and stared at Emma's file. Every instinct he'd developed over 15 years in social work was screaming at him that something was wrong. The careful way Emma moved, her sudden behavioral change, Patricia's rehearsed explanations, and now this report from her teacher about pain when sitting. He thought about the home visit Patricia had agreed to so readily. In his experience, abusive foster parents usually tried to delay or avoid home visits, but Patricia had seemed almost eager, which suggested she was confident about hiding whatever might be happening. That confidence troubled him more than resistance would have. Marcus opened his computer and began typing up his notes from the meeting. He documented everything: Emma's careful movements, her silence, Patricia's domination of the conversation, the teacher's observations. He'd learned long ago that in cases like this, documentation was everything. If his suspicions were correct, he'd need a paper trail to build a case. As he worked, his phone rang. It was his supervisor, Janet Morrison. "Marcus, I just got a call from Patricia Henley. She's concerned about the questions you were asking today. She feels like you were implying something inappropriate about her care of Emma." Marcus sighed. This was exactly what he'd expected. "Janet, I have concerns about this placement. I think we need to investigate further." "Based on what?" "Patricia has been one of our most reliable foster parents for over 5 years. She's never had a single complaint filed against her. Emma's school reports are excellent, and there are no behavioral issues reported." Sometimes no behavioral issues can be a red flag in itself, Marcus said carefully. "And there are some physical indicators that concern me." "Physical indicators? Did you see signs of abuse?" Marcus hesitated. He hadn't seen bruises or obvious injuries, but he'd seen something else: a child in pain, moving carefully, afraid to speak. "I want to do an unannounced home visit," he said finally. "Marcus, you know we can't do unannounced visits without cause. Patricia has agreed to a scheduled visit. That should be sufficient." After hanging up, Marcus felt the familiar frustration that came with working within a system that prioritized procedure over instinct. He understood the need for protocols, but sometimes those same protocols prevented them from protecting the children they were meant to serve. He looked at the clock. It was almost 5, and most of the office had cleared out. Marcus gathered his things and headed for the parking lot, but instead of driving home, he found himself driving toward the neighborhood where the Henleys lived. He didn't plan to stop or interfere. He just wanted to get a feel for the area, maybe drive by the house. It was a nice neighborhood, middle-class homes with well-maintained lawns. The Henley house was a 2-story colonial with a neat front yard and a minivan in the driveway. As he drove slowly past, Marcus saw Emma through the front window. She was standing in what appeared to be the living room, and even from a distance, he could see that same careful, controlled posture he'd noticed in his office. She wasn't moving around like a typical 12-year-old would. She was standing very still, very straight, as if movement itself was something to be avoided. Marcus drove home that night with Emma's face burned into his memory. In 15 years of social work, he'd learned to trust his instincts, and his instincts were telling him that Emma Rodriguez was in trouble. The question was whether anyone else would believe him in time to help her. Part 2. The next morning, Marcus arrived at the office with a plan. He'd spent most of the night researching Patricia Henley's history as a foster parent, and what he'd found was interesting. On paper, she looked perfect. 5 years of foster care, multiple successful placements, glowing recommendations from previous case workers. But as Marcus dug deeper, he noticed a pattern that made his blood run cold. Patricia specialized in taking older children, typically between the ages of 8 and 14. She rarely kept them for more than 8 months, and the reason for placement changes was almost always the same. The children requested to be moved to a different home. The official records cited difficulty adjusting to family structure or behavioral incompatibility. But Marcus had seen enough cases to know that children who had been genuinely happy in a placement didn't usually ask to leave. He called the Department of Human Services in the neighboring county, where Patricia had fostered children before moving to Millbrook. The case worker he spoke with, David Kim, was initially hesitant to discuss Patricia's previous placements, but when Marcus explained his concerns, David's tone changed. "You know, I always wondered about some of those cases," David said quietly. "The kids seemed different after being with Patricia, more withdrawn, more compliant. At the time, I thought it was just adjustment, but looking back." "Did any of the children make specific complaints?" "That's the thing, they never complained directly. They would just ask to be moved, and when we asked why, they'd give vague answers about not fitting in or feeling uncomfortable. One boy, Tommy Martinez, he was with Patricia for about 7 months. When he asked to be moved, he kept saying he was tired of being good all the time. I never really understood what he meant." Marcus felt his suspicions solidifying. "David, Did you ever notice any physical symptoms with the children? Complaints about pain, difficulty sitting, anything like that?" There was a long pause. "Now that you mention it, yes. Several of them seem to have trouble sitting for long periods. Patricia always had an explanation: stomach issues, growing pains, previous trauma manifesting physically. She was very knowledgeable about trauma responses in children." After hanging up, Marcus sat back in his chair and processed what he'd learned. Patricia wasn't just an abusive foster parent. She was a sophisticated one. She knew exactly how to manipulate the system, how to explain away symptoms, how to appear concerned and caring while systematically breaking down the children in her care. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Mr. Thompson, this is Emma. I got your number from the business card you gave Mrs. Henley. Can you help me? I'm scared." Marcus's heart started racing. He quickly texted back, "Emma, are you safe right now? Where are you?" "At school. Mrs. Henley doesn't know I have a phone. A friend let me borrow it. I can't talk long." "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" "I can't sit down anymore. It hurts too much. Mrs. Henley says if I tell anyone, she'll make sure I never get adopted. She says no one will believe me because I'm a foster kid with behavior problems." Marcus's hands were shaking as he typed, "Emma, I believe you. I'm going to help you. Can you stay after school today? I can pick you up." "She picks me up every day at 3:15. She times it." "What about tomorrow? Is there a way we can meet?" "I don't know. She's always watching. Mr. Thompson, I think she's done this before, to other kids." Before Marcus could respond, another message came through. "I have to go, she's here." Marcus immediately called the school, but by the time he got through to the main office, Emma had already left with Patricia. He asked to speak with Mrs. Chen, Emma's teacher. "I'm very concerned about Emma," he told her. "Has she seemed different lately? More withdrawn, having trouble sitting?" "Actually, yes," Mrs. Chen said. "Yesterday she asked if she could stand during our math lesson, and today during lunch she barely ate anything. She just stood by the wall instead of sitting with the other kids." "Mrs. Chen, I need you to document everything you observe about Emma. Everything. And if she tries to talk to you about her home situation, please let her know that you're a mandated reporter and that you're required to help her if she's being hurt." "Mr. Thompson, are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying that Emma is in danger, and I need evidence to prove it." Marcus spent the rest of the day building his case. He reached out to other professionals who had worked with Patricia's previous foster children. He called doctors, teachers, and case workers. Slowly, a pattern emerged that was impossible to ignore. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, a pediatrician who had treated several of Patricia's foster children, was particularly helpful. I remember seeing quite a few of Patricia's kids over the years, she said. They often came in with complaints about abdominal pain, difficulty sitting, constipation. Patricia was always very concerned, very involved in their care. She'd suggest various treatments, dietary changes, stress reduction techniques. Did you ever suspect abuse? I I had concerns, but the symptoms were often consistent with stress-related issues, and Patricia seemed so caring. But there was one child, a girl named Ashley, who whispered to me during an examination that sitting hurt. When I asked her to elaborate, she clammed up. Patricia was in the room, and she immediately explained that Ashley had been having behavioral issues and was seeking attention. What kind of examination were you doing? Just a routine physical, but when I asked Ashley to sit on the examination table, she hesitated. She eventually sat down, but she was very careful about how she positioned herself. When I asked her to lie down for the abdominal exam, she seemed relieved. Marcus felt sick. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture that was becoming clearer and more horrifying with each conversation. Patricia wasn't just physically abusing these children. She was doing it in a way that was designed to be hidden, to be explained away as behavioral or medical issues. That evening, Marcus drove past the Henley house again. This time, he parked down the street and watched. Through the windows, he could see Patricia moving around the house, but he didn't see Emma. After about an hour, he saw a light come on in an upstairs window. Emma's silhouette appeared briefly, and Marcus could see that she was standing, not sitting or lying down. His phone buzzed. Another text from the same unknown number. Mr. Thompson, I'm writing this on my friend's phone during our sleepover. Mrs. Henley doesn't know I'm here. I need to tell someone what's happening before I lose my nerve. Marcus quickly responded, I'm listening. You're safe to tell me. Mrs. Henley hurts me. She makes me sit on things that hurt, and she times how long I have to stay there. She says it's discipline, that it's teaching me to be good. She says all the other kids she's helped needed the same kind of discipline, and that's why they're all doing so well now. Marcus felt rage building in his chest. Emma, how long has this been happening? Since about a month after I got there. At first, she was really nice. But then she started saying I needed to learn to be more obedient, more grateful. She said the other families gave up on me because I wasn't good enough, but she could fix me. Emma, I need you to know that what she's doing is not discipline. It's abuse. And you don't deserve it. She has pictures of all the other kids who lived with her. She shows them to me and tells me how much better they are now, how they learned to be good. She says if I don't learn, if I tell anyone, she'll make sure I never find a real family. Marcus was typing furiously. Emma, you are going to find a real family. But first, we need to get you somewhere safe. Can you stay where you are tonight? My friend's mom said I could stay, but Mrs. Henley expects me back tomorrow morning. She's picking me up at 9 for church. Emma, I want you to think very carefully about this. Tomorrow morning, when Mrs. Henley comes to pick you up, I want you to tell your friend's mother that you don't want to go home. Can you do that? What if she doesn't believe me? What if she makes me go anyway? Then you tell her to call me. You give her my number and tell her to call me immediately. Can you remember my number? Marcus spent the next hour texting with Emma, giving her instructions, preparing her for what would happen next. He explained how the system worked, what would happen if she disclosed the abuse, and most importantly, that she had done nothing wrong. "Mr. Thompson," Emma texted, "why didn't anyone believe the other kids?" It was a question that haunted Marcus. I think some people suspected, but Patricia is very good at hiding what she does. She's had a lot of practice. But Emma, things are different now. I believe you, and I'm going to make sure other people believe you too. What if I'm not strong enough? What if I get scared and don't say anything? Emma, you've already been incredibly strong. You've survived 6 months of this, and you've found the courage to reach out for help. That takes more strength than most adults have. The conversation continued past midnight, with Emma asking questions about what would happen next, and Marcus doing his best to prepare her for the difficult road ahead. When Emma finally said good night, Marcus sat in his dark living room and planned his next moves. First thing in the morning, he would call his supervisor and demand an emergency meeting. He would present all the evidence he'd gathered, all the patterns he'd uncovered. He would make it clear that Emma Rodriguez was in immediate danger and needed to be removed from Patricia Henley's home. But as Marcus went to bed that night, he couldn't shake the feeling that the system that was supposed to protect children like Emma might instead protect Patricia. After all, she had 5 years of glowing reviews, and Emma was just another foster child with a history of trauma. The thought that kept him awake was simple and terrifying. What if no one believed her? Part 3. Sunday morning arrived with the kind of gray, overcast sky that seemed to match Marcus's mood. He'd barely slept, running through scenarios in his head, preparing for every possible outcome. At 8:30 a.m., his phone rang. It was Sandra Mitchell, the mother of Emma's friend. "Mr. Thompson, this is Sandra Mitchell. I have Emma Rodriguez here and she's asked me to call you. She says she can't go home and she's very upset." Marcus felt a mixture of relief and dread. "Mrs. Mitchell, is Emma safe right now?" "Yes, she's here with me. But Mr. Thompson, Patricia Henley is outside in her car. She's been honking the horn and demanding that Emma come out. Emma is hiding in my daughter's room and she's terrified. Mrs. Mitchell, I need you to not let Emma leave with Patricia. Can you do that?" I don't know. I mean, Patricia is her legal guardian, right? Don't I have to let Emma go with her? Marcus could hear Patricia's voice in the background, calling for Emma to come outside. Mrs. Mitchell, Emma has disclosed abuse to me. I'm a mandated reporter, and I'm telling you that child is not safe with Patricia Henley. Please don't let her take Emma. There was a pause, then Sandra's voice came back, firmer now. Okay, I'll tell Patricia that Emma isn't feeling well and needs to stay here. But Mr. Thompson, you need to get here soon. I'm on my way, and Mrs. Mitchell, thank you for protecting her. Marcus threw on clothes and drove across town faster than he'd ever driven before. When he arrived at the Mitchell house, he could see Patricia's minivan parked in the driveway. Through the windshield, he could see Patricia on her phone, gesturing angrily. Sandra met him at the door. She's been calling someone, probably trying to figure out what her rights are. Emma is upstairs with my daughter. She's been crying. Marcus nodded. I need to talk to Emma first, then I'll deal with Patricia. Emma was sitting on the bed in what was obviously a young girl's room, surrounded by stuffed animals and posters of pop stars. She looked smaller than she had in his office, more fragile. When she saw Marcus, her face crumpled. I told Mrs. Mitchell, she whispered. I told her I couldn't go home. You did exactly the right thing, Marcus said, sitting down carefully on the chair across from the bed. Emma, I need to ask you some questions, and I need you to be as honest as possible. Can you do that? Emma nodded, wiping her eyes. When Mrs. Henley hurts you, what exactly does she do? Emma's voice was barely audible. She makes me sit on things, hard things, sharp things. She has this wooden stool in the basement with nails sticking up from it. Not long nails, just little ones, but they hurt. She makes me sit there for hours sometimes. Marcus felt his stomach turn. How often does this happen? Almost every day. She says it's teaching me discipline. She says I need to learn to endure discomfort without complaining, because that's what good children do. Emma, has she ever touched you inappropriately, in a sexual way? No, Emma said quickly. It's not like that. She says that's disgusting and wrong. She says what she does is different, that it's helping me become a better person. Marcus nodded, making mental notes. Has she ever hurt you in any other way? Sometimes she makes me kneel on rice or salt. Sometimes she puts things in my underwear before I have to sit down. Things that hurt. Emma's voice was getting smaller with each word. Emma, I need you to know that none of this is normal. None of this is discipline. What Mrs. Henley has been doing to you is called abuse, and it's against the law. Emma looked up at him with eyes that seemed far too old for her 12-year-old face. Are you going to take me away from her? Yes, you're never going back to that house. Relief flooded Emma's face, followed immediately by fear. But what if no one else wants me? What if I end up somewhere worse? Before Marcus could answer, Sandra Mitchell appeared in the doorway. Mr. Thompson, Patricia is getting very agitated. She's demanding to speak with you. Marcus squeezed Emma's shoulder. You stay here with Mrs. Mitchell and her daughter. I'm going to go talk to Patricia and then I'm going to make some phone calls. You're safe now, Emma, I promise. Patricia Henley was standing beside her minivan, her face flushed with anger. When she saw Marcus approaching, she straightened up and put on the same fake smile he'd seen in his office. Mr. Thompson, thank goodness you're here. Poor Emma seems to be having some kind of episode. I think she's having a reaction to changing her medication. She's been very confused lately. Mrs. Henley, Emma has disclosed abuse. I'm removing her from your home immediately. Patricia's mask slipped for just a moment, and Marcus saw something cold and calculating in her eyes. Then the concerned foster mother expression returned. Oh my goodness, what has she told you? Mr. Thompson, Emma has been having behavioral issues lately. I've been meaning to call you about it. She's been making up stories, saying things that aren't true. It's a cry for attention. She's described specific incidents of abuse, Mrs. Henley. Very detailed descriptions. Mr. Thompson, you have to understand, Emma has been through tremendous trauma. Sometimes traumatized children create false memories or elaborate fantasies. I've been working with her therapist on this very issue. Marcus felt his anger rising. What therapist? There's no therapist listed in her file. Patricia's smile faltered slightly. Well, we've been consulting with someone privately. I didn't want to worry the department unnecessarily. Mrs. Henley, I'm going to ask you directly. Have you ever used physical punishment that involved making Emma sit on objects designed to cause pain? That's ridiculous, Patricia said, but her voice had lost some of its conviction. Mr. Thompson, I think you're letting a troubled child manipulate you. Emma has a history of behavioral problems and attention-seeking behavior. Then you won't mind if we inspect your home today. Patricia's face went pale. Well, of course not, but I think you need a warrant for that, don't you? And really, Mr. Thompson, I think you're overreacting to the fantasies of a disturbed child. Marcus pulled out his phone. I'm calling my supervisor and the police. Emma will not be returning to your home. Mr. Thompson, wait, Patricia said, her voice taking on a pleading tone. You're making a mistake. Emma is a very troubled girl. She's been through multiple placements and she has a pattern of making false accusations. Check her file, I'm sure it's all documented. Mrs. Henley, I have checked her file. I've also checked the files of other children who were placed with you. There's a pattern here, and it's not what you think it is. For the first time since he'd met her, Patricia Henley looked genuinely frightened. What do you mean? I mean that I've spoken with case workers from 3 different counties. I've talked to doctors, teachers, and other professionals who worked with children you fostered. They all remember the same things: children who had difficulty sitting, children who complained of pain, children who became unusually compliant and withdrawn. Patricia opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Mrs. Henley, I want you to leave now. Do not attempt to contact Emma or approach her in any way. Do not go to her school or try to see her. If you do, I will have you arrested for harassment. Patricia got into her minivan without another word, her hands shaking as she started the engine. As she drove away, Marcus called his supervisor. Janet, I need an emergency placement for Emma Rodriguez, and I need it now. Marcus, what's going on? Emma has disclosed serious physical abuse by Patricia Henley. I've removed her from the home, and I need to place her somewhere safe immediately. Marcus, are you sure about this? Patricia has been one of our most reliable. Janet, I am absolutely certain. Emma has described systematic torture designed to look like discipline. I have corroborating evidence from multiple sources. This woman is a predator who has been abusing foster children for years. There was a long pause. Okay, Marcus, I'll make some calls. Where is Emma now? She's safe. I'll bring her in within the hour. Next, Marcus called the police. Detective Sarah Williams had worked with the Department of Children and Family Services many times over the years, and she knew Marcus well enough to trust his judgment. Sarah, I need you to get a search warrant for 1247 Maple Street. I have a child abuse case that I think is going to be bigger than anyone realizes. How big? I think Patricia Henley has been systematically abusing foster children for at least 5 years, possibly longer. She's been using methods that are designed to cause pain without leaving obvious marks. Jesus, Marcus, what kind of evidence do you have? I have a current victim who's disclosed specific details. I have a pattern of behavior across multiple placements, and I have statements from professionals who worked with her previous victims. Sarah, I think if we search that house, we're going to find the instruments she's been using. I'll get the warrant. Can you meet me at the house in 2 hours? After hanging up, Marcus went back inside to find Emma sitting at the kitchen table with Sandra Mitchell and her daughter, slowly eating a bowl of cereal. She looked up when he entered, her eyes full of questions. Emma, I need to take you to the office now so we can find you a safe place to stay. Mrs. Henley won't be able to hurt you anymore. Emma nodded, but Marcus could see the fear in her eyes. What's going to happen to me? We're going to find you a new placement, a safe one. And Emma, I want you to know that what you did today took incredible courage. You saved yourself, and you probably saved other children too." As they drove to the office, Emma was quiet for most of the trip. Finally, she spoke up. "Mr. Thompson, will you make sure the other kids know it wasn't their fault? The ones who were with Mrs. Henley before me." Marcus looked at her in the rearview mirror, this brave little girl who had endured months of torture and was still thinking about others. "Yes, Emma, I promise." Part 4. The search of Patricia Henley's house 2 hours later revealed a horror that exceeded even Marcus's worst fears. In the basement, Detective Williams and her team found what could only be described as a torture chamber disguised as a discipline room. There was the wooden stool Emma had described, with small nails protruding from its surface. There were other devices, 2 chairs with strategically placed screws, meditation cushions filled with small stones instead of soft material, and a collection of objects that could be hidden in clothing to cause discomfort when sitting. But perhaps most disturbing was the photo album they found in Patricia's bedroom. It contained pictures of all her former foster children, with detailed notes about their progress during their time with her. The notes read like a manual for breaking a child's spirit. Day 45 subject showing improved compliance, reduced defiance by 70%. Month 3, excellent progress. Subject now anticipates correction and modifies behavior accordingly. Detective Williams called Marcus as he was helping Emma settle into a temporary placement with the Morrison family, experienced foster parents who specialized in caring for children who had experienced trauma. "Marcus, you need to see this. Patricia Henley wasn't just abusing these kids, she was documenting it. She has detailed records going back 7 years, covering at least 15 different children." Marcus felt sick. 15 children. Maybe more. We're still going through everything. Marcus, some of these notes, they're written like she thought she was doing something positive, like she genuinely believed she was helping these kids by torturing them. Where is Patricia now? In custody. She's not talking, but with the evidence we found, she doesn't need to. Her lawyer is already talking about a plea deal. That evening, Marcus sat in his apartment and tried to process what they'd uncovered. 15 children, possibly more, who had been systematically abused by a woman who had been trusted by the system to care for them. Children who had tried to tell adults what was happening but hadn't been believed because Patricia was so skilled at explaining away their symptoms. His phone rang. It was David Kim, the case worker from the neighboring county. "Marcus, I heard about the arrest. I wanted to thank you for pushing this. I've been thinking about those kids all day, wondering what I could have done differently." "David, you couldn't have known. She was very good at what she did." "That's just it, though. I think part of me did know. I think a lot of us had suspicions, but we talked ourselves out of them because Patricia seemed so professional, so knowledgeable about trauma. Marcus understood. The system was designed to trust foster parents, especially ones with good track records. It was easier to believe that traumatized children were acting out or seeking attention than to believe that the adults caring for them were the source of their trauma. David, I'm going to need your help contacting Patricia's former foster children. They need to know that what happened to them wasn't their fault, and they need to know that someone finally believed. Over the next few days, Marcus worked with case workers from 3 different counties to reach out to Patricia's former victims. The conversations were some of the most difficult he'd ever had in his career. Tommy Martinez, now 16 and living with his adoptive family, broke down when Marcus explained what they'd discovered. "I knew it wasn't normal," he said through tears. "I knew what she was doing was wrong, but when I tried to tell my case worker, she said I was having trouble adjusting. She said Patricia was just trying to help me learn structure." Ashley Williams, now 14, had a similar reaction. "I thought I was crazy," she said. "Mrs. Henley told me that if I was really being hurt, there would be marks, and since there were no marks, it must all be in my head." Each conversation broke Marcus's heart a little more. These children had carried the trauma of Patricia's abuse for years, compounded by the trauma of not being believed when they tried to get help. But there were also moments of healing. When the children learned that Emma had been brave enough to speak up and that her courage had led to Patricia's arrest, many of them expressed pride and relief. "She saved other kids," Tommy said. "She did what I couldn't do."